Hey, hey guys.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome to the Digital Rush. I'm Krista Tidman.
And as you know, I'm Brandon Cooper.
Yes, and we're back. Another episode. It feels like forever though
Yeah.
since we had our last one. I don't
Yes, it
know.
does.
April, flies by. But let's get into what we're going to discuss today. So we're going to simplify that website migration for you guys,
Yeah.
and
We're going to make it a
mhm,
little bit easier for you to understand it and overall just kind of guide you in the right direction. That's
yeah.
really our goal today.
Definitely. And reasons why you should even start a website migration. Why should you? What will it help you with? And also how to make sure that you're evaluating and analyzing your data correctly throughout the process.
Yeah, definitely. And even before this, we do have some questions that are commonly asked when it comes to migrations, whether it is, SEO related or just, preparation items that you should have before you actually start the process of migrating. Because as you know, it can be very complicated or it can be very easy. It
Yes.
depends on a number of things, whether it's platforms or we'll get into it. Don't worry.
I know it is complex,
Yeah.
And can get exhausting. So what should I do before I even move my website, would you say?
Back up your website. That's the first thing. Always back up your website with your back up that and then go to GA, download your data from GA.
Okay.
Whether it is a migration or you're changing domains, it doesn't matter. Go in there, download that information as a backup for your own records. So it just, again, it's a backup. It allows you to at least have something, just in case something happens and you lose all of those SEO value, all the SEO value that came to your site, you still have a record of what your rankings were.
Exactly. And I know maybe I hear a lot of questions often, like users will ask, well, will it actually help with where I'm ranking online? So my search engine
So
rankings, like
generally speaking, when it comes to a migration helping your rankings, it wouldn't naturally do so. But if you change your platform from a very complicated, very clustery type of code in the backend platform, and you make it a lot easier for crawlers to access your pages, it's going to make it easier for them to access and rank your content. So that may in turn give you better rankings. So again, it's kind of situational when it comes to that, but overall, generally most of the time, no, it won't, because it's based off of what if you transfer from one system to another or you change domains, generally most of the time it won't. But again, it may.
Okay. And we were saying Google Analytics, like that's the main thing you say outside of SEMrush, what I need to do before.
Yeah, I would definitely say, that outside of SEMrush, the first thing is definitely download your GA. Because
just download all that data.
Yeah, pretty much everything. And any campaign that's also appropriately assigned to that domain, whether it's goal completions or whatever it might be specific to that, download everything. Because the more data you have, the better off you're going to be.
And you can also compare and contrast, right?
Yeah, right.
The different data sets. So you know what was going on before and after, now that you started that process.
Exactly, right. And don't worry, we'll guide you through exactly how to do a lot of this stuff in SEMrush as well, whether it is even comparing your domain to your new domain, or I'm sorry, your previous domain to your new one that you're migrating to, or even starting a new project around that and getting an idea of your current health scores and everything in between.
Yes. So the most important thing before we go in the tool, what are you thinking, Brandon, that you need to do before you migrate? I know we talked about GA, but what else?
Prepare. Preparation, really, at the end of the day, is your number one thing. If you go into a website migration with no idea, one, what you're doing, two,
that's not good.
Really just you're like, oh, I'm going to start here, here, and here, but maybe there's 5 other preliminary things you could do before then. You really need to prepare for it, because it can go really 2 ways: really bad, or it's good.
It can be really good, or it can.
No, it can be really good, granted, yes, but I kind of make that fall into
if you're not preparing, I get it. What are you going to expect is going to happen?
Exactly, right. Yeah, if you're not prepared, you don't have an idea of how many pages you have, you don't have an idea of where your rankings are, you don't have an idea of the keywords even that you're trying your website's ranking for before you do that migration, you're going to go into it blind, because you're not going to have an idea of what your previous rankings were and the elements behind that. And it just, nobody wants that.
Exactly. And while we're talking about preparing, first step, let's also discuss, reasons why you would want to migrate your site. Why do you want to start this migration? So besides changing your sites, maybe the site structure, the navigation, to clean it up, for the user experience, that
that's
that journey.
definitely a very common thing is, site structure, navigation, design are, as everybody knows watching this right now, knows that those are three of the biggest things with your website when it comes to, obviously how people are going to interact with it. You don't have if you have a very complicated site structure or navigation elements all over the place, people are going to get confused, and so will crawlers. So the same thing applies here when it comes to reasons to migrate your website. Navigation simplification, definitely. Design, obviously. I mean, if you're changing from one bad design to a good design, that's definitely going to help the users
finding what they need on your site,
exactly,
the whole journey.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Awesome. And also changing the domain name. What would you say? Just by website migration, definitely a go?
Yeah, changing your domain name. It's actually a lot of stuff.
Rebranding.
Yeah, rebranding. That's one, obviously a big one too.
You're gonna have to.
If you're rebranding, you're adding a mobile site to add mobile version to your site, but maybe your platform doesn't support that type of thing. Again, it's very subjective compared to the platforms you're on. But if you're adding a mobile website, you're moving to a new hosting server, even too. That's something you definitely need to pay attention to, and even communicate with your hosting provider that you're going to be making that migration so that they can prepare things on their end as well. Maybe things you don't have access to. And as you said, last but not least, obviously changing your domain, rebranding your business.
And that's a huge decision too.
Exactly.
That you definitely need to not take lightly. You need to decide, do I want to rebrand? Do I want to change everything? And just also another reason, moving from HTTP to HTTPS. I know that's been something very prevalent in the last couple of years.
And you can accomplish a lot of that too with like 301s and stuff when it comes to that. But at the end of the day, if you're doing a full migration, it definitely follow this checklist that we're going to be providing you today. Because again, we have this on our knowledge base and everything for you to access. But again, too, it's so prevalent that you make sure you're doing this right and you're prepared.
Simplifying.
That's at the end of the day.
Oh, and preparing. Remember that. So now let's get into just before we start this migration. We have our checklist. I know we'll pull up in a few moments. And just some basic rules, you want to stick by. So what would you say right now are some of those basic rules that you would follow before starting it again?
Take your time. Take your time with the migration. Do not rush it. I'm serious when I say this, because if you rush that, there may be small little elements you don't realize. Whether if you're on a WordPress site, you have some plugins installed with custom settings assigned. Whether it's maybe custom CSS or something of that case that makes this look and feel the way you want it to feel, but yet you transfer your site over and none of that's kept. That's the first thing, is always make sure you migrate the whole website at once. Okay, so do it in one sitting, but take your time with it. Dedicate a couple days, dedicate a day to it. Dedicate as much time as you need, but make sure you're doing it in one swoop, and don't do it halfway and then stop, because there may be things that are lost in translation really when it comes to transitioning.
And we were going to say, what else about the timing? When should you actually test this out, or maybe have a sample before?
So this is really prevalent when it comes to your GA. All right. On your Google Analytics, the first thing you want to do when you have the idea, even thinking about migrating your site, is look for your low traffic points in the day. So times where you see consistently across the board, whether it's a month or even 2 months worth of data, obviously the more data, the better. But when you're looking at this, if you see during certain, let's say on like a Saturday night at 11 p.m., at that time frame, there's less traffic going to my site. It may be worth it to do it at that time, because then there's people that are coming to your site that next business day. When they arrive after everything's been transferred, they're going to see this brand new site.
Exactly. So just really minimize the impact, right, of when your users, when your users are pretty prevalent and online. So anything else with the Google Analytics you also want to tie in? Any other besides the prep that we already discussed? Anything else?
Yeah, preliminarily, probably there's a couple other things, but we'll get into that when it comes to the tools we're going to be talking about in SEMrush. So again, once
don't worry, we have a lot of integrations.
Don't worry.
Google Analytics,
so once we get there, we'll go over that today.
Okay.
All right.
And before we get started, what you always love to say, remember to plan and test. You have to plan. Be strategic. Yeah. Okay. So let's go into the tool. Let's dive into the site audit. And let's check it out. Okay, so here we are.
Alrighty. So on here with the site audit, I mean, we're using HBO as an example today. But what you're gonna, I mean, obviously, because of the very popular show,
Of course.
everybody
I
loves.
wonder what that show
Yeah,
is.
exactly.
On
Right.
Sundays, it's back. Yeah.
Yeah.
We all love it. We're obsessed.
All right. So during the migration, when you're preparing for the migration itself,
We are prepping.
Obviously create a project in SEMrush if you don't have one created already. If you do already and you've already running tests and you already have things tracked and whatnot, this is great. First thing you want to do is come into the site audit. All right. Get an idea of every error, warning, and notice that your website has in our tool. Then go up here to the PDF button, whether it is in a PDF, which you can do right here via the full site audit report.
Yes.
So that's going to export all that data so you have it as a backup before the migration. And then on top of that, if you would like to, you can always go here and export everything else into an Excel or a CSV file as well. So you can have, again, now a PDF version of it and an actual Excel file, or, obviously if you like CSVs, you can use that and make it a lot easier. Again, too, remember, you can check this too. So you'll have relative URLs. So you have a better idea of your URL structure during this export. So I highly recommend doing this before you actually export this website and you actually start the migration.
And that's something new. A new advanced feature.
Yes, it is. Yep.
In the site audit.
And just we will come back to this, but there is actually another feature in the site audit that is very beneficial.
Dun, dun, dun.
When you've already transferred the site and you're going through kind of the testing phase.
You got to wait. Yeah, we'll show you that.
Yeah.
And so when you start this project and you're setting up all your different analytical tools within SEMrush, besides the site audit, obviously to check the website's health, we also recommend position tracking and the content audit.
Yeah. So for the position tracking campaign, there's one thing I would recommend doing when you start this. First off, when you're looking at your rankings, you get an idea of your keywords and your current visibility trend. So you have an idea of how you're fluctuating really on the SERPs, obviously based on the locale you've chosen.
Yes.
But when you are, let's say you're changing a domain name with this now, if you want to get an idea of, really the transitional factor, how, between your current domain to the new domain is going to happen.
Yes.
You can add a domain here. Add your new domain as a competitor. So what'll happen is when your new site starts getting some traction, starts getting picked up, we're then going to pick that up and actually show you how the rankings are changing and what you'll probably see for your new domain, unless maybe you have a redirect in place or maybe you just don't have anything for it. Once it starts dipping down with the rankings, you're going to start seeing your new site, hopefully start gaining some momentum because that's where your traffic's now going. So it's, again, just another little trick or a little tip.
I would say tip, definitely.
Like a tip and trick a little bit.
Same thing.
Yeah. You can add this right here. Again, it's just this way you don't lose any ranking data. GA will always be a nice fallback as well for that information once you've hooked up your new your actual Google Analytic code to the site.
But why not have it all in one area?
Exactly, right.
With SEMrush.
Yep.
And also, it doesn't mean it's going to be a competitor. I always tell any user, use that to your advantage. Add a domain. Doesn't have to be a competitor off of that.
It doesn't,
Any page you want. So now we're tracking and monitoring those rankings because that's when we're going to have that, that trend over time and that historical data. The next step, and something that we recommend as well, the content audit. You definitely want to set this up. There's
two really overlying things you're going to get from this. One, an idea of your site structure. If you aren't very, you don't really have a good idea or you don't understand, what your site structure is, sometimes that can't happen. But in this case, what you're going to see, if we scroll down a little bit, is you're going to get the subfolder, an idea of where this is. So as you can see, this is pulling right off the root domain, and then what the URL is. And if you click into this, it's going to go right to HBO's about page. So the whole purpose of this is to get an idea, first off, obviously, of your site structure itself, all right? Because you do need a sitemap, actually a valid sitemap to use this tool.
Upload,
And, again, you can use a .txt file if you want, as long as it's under a certain megabyte percentile. But, in this case, you do need a nice idea of what your site structure is, and then going from there into pretty much everything else.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and site structure, and then getting an idea of what your website content is, whether you have titles that are missing, or if you do have titles, they're here.
Your own little helpful table, to help you with pretty much editing your content and figuring out, based off of you could even connect Google Analytics and Search Console here, which a lot of users, they probably already know. There are a lot of integrations that we have.
And if you do not know this, under GSC, you're going to be able to get your search queries that are used for these pages. And on top of that, for GA, sorry, I have to scroll down a little bit.
Yep.
For GA, you're going to get your sessions, average session duration, and bounce rate. So the whole thing here is going to give you a ton of information regarding these pages or even the blog posts themselves.
Yes.
Again, highly recommend setting this up.
Definitely. So now that we started all of those different tools within a project, now we want to focus more on, the site audit and the tools going on and, what you could utilize.
Yeah. All right. So after you have already successfully started the process, you have an idea, you already know what you're transferring, whether it's a SSL, you're pointing this way or that way. So here, first thing you want to do is make a copy of your website. That's the first thing, obviously. Once you make a copy of your website and you already have that, you have it transferred over to the new hosting server, or maybe it's on your same hosting server, but under a different domain, whatever your situation is. Once you have that pointed over, the first thing you're going to want to go to is this. Go back to the site audit. All right. Go up here to the gear icon. Then what you can do is you can go down to here with the crawling with your credentials.
So why would this help us? Bypassing it?
So when you launch a new website, it's inevitable that you're going to have to do some work on it.
You're going to work on it? Oh, man.
Right. You're going to have to spend some time and make sure everything's accounted for, make sure that everything's set up right and whatnot. During that time, process of that, there's a good chance you're probably going to want to password protect your pages. This way, Google doesn't crawl it. And the same thing applies to with even your robots.txt file by putting a disallow in there. So this way, nobody can crawl it.
Okay.
When you crawl with your credentials right here, you have the ability to put in your username and password for the site.
Nice.
When you do that, it's just going to allow SEMrush to crawl it.
No one else, yeah.
Yeah, no one else.
No.
All we're going to do is crawl it and give you the site audit grade. So this way, before you launch your new website, you now have a good idea, really,
definitely.
A good idea of what your current health score is.
Because before, this is new too.
Yeah.
So this was what we kind of wanted to show you guys, that little cliffhanger we had you on there.
Right. Yeah, and the same thing applies to for the bypass disallow in robots.txt. The whole thing here, all you have to do is download this file, upload it to your directory of where your files are.
We are not HBO for the record.
Yeah,
we do not.
We are not. It's just, again, just a
them.
sample project. You put this up there, we'll be able to detect that and we'll bypass together.
Yes. Okay, awesome. So it's password protected. We're good to go with those restrictions. So that's also something new. And what about checking your new site for those different errors?
Yeah, so for checking your new site for errors, obviously there's a few steps to the process of this. So first off, when you go, let me leave this real quick and go over here and then go to, let's see,
we're going to be looking at the domain.
Crawl sources. Here we go. Underneath the crawl sources, it's going to be step 1. All right. Now, generally, when you migrate your site, the first thing I'd always recommend is right here. Keep this as website. All right. You can use your sitemap if you want, but I'd highly recommend leave this as website. Main reason why is because during the transfer, if you happen to have any orphan pages that may have just come up out of nowhere, really, or maybe they already were and you didn't know they were there, this running with the website feature of this will most likely pick it up. Hence, that's pretty much why I highly recommend doing that. The second area is going to be the pages. So obviously for this, we only have it set to 100. Go to custom and set this to a custom amount that's a little bit higher than what your current pages are. That will actually account for the orphan pages here. So if you have 10,000 pages in your website, almost exactly, and you crawl for 12,000, you find out 100 pages are orphaned on your site and they're not. And just so everybody knows, orphan pages don't appear in your sitemap. If none of them are in there, then we're going to pick them up and actually show them as one of the issues on your website.
Wow, finally. Okay.
Yeah. And then, of course, the last one being the crawl scope.
Yeah.
This mainly pertains to you if you're using a subdomain for the test site. So some users will, use like a, test.hbo.com as an example here, of course. But again, this is meant to just kind of give you an idea behind this. All right.
Yes.
Now, we did just get a question in regards to the
Google bot and SEMrush bot.
What the biggest difference is. They both so here's the thing. They're both kind of the same crawl. All right. They both accomplish the same thing at the end of the day, but they're wearing two different hats. So the way it works is Google has in our tool both a desktop and mobile crawler, while SEMrush also has a desktop and mobile crawler. Both the desktops and both the mobile crawlers, whether it's Google or SEMrush versions, both wear almost the same hats. They crawl the same exact way, but some for instance, there may be instances with some hosting service, for instance, blocking our crawler from crawling.
Yes.
So the Google crawler will accomplish the same exact thing you're looking for. And again, we abide by every single one of Google's recommendations and all of their criteria when it comes to even creating this crawler. So again, everything is as clean as possible when it comes to it. They're both pretty much the same thing. If you ever run into issues with the actual SEMrush crawler, always try the Google crawler next and see what happens.
Why not? Yeah. Test it out. Test out both.
Yep.
But it just mimics the Google bot, the SEMrush bot, essentially. Okay.
Awesome. Alrighty. So now,
we started the site audit. So let's go back into that, the overview, that's going to present to you the total number of issues, like we said, and also your overall health score.
Yeah.
So definitely you want to prioritize those top issues for your site, and you can start fixing those because they're definitely the most prevalent and severe, you want to fix now.
Yep.
So those are going to be the errors.
Yep.
So if we click on them, we can definitely prioritize and make it a lot easier. I think it's very comprehensive, whenever you're in the site audit. And if you click on any issue, we're going to give you that detailed analysis, when we found it, and also those different credentials like why and how above, right up here. Oh no, we're why and how to fix that. Yeah, Brandon's a little eager.
Misclicked.
Yeah. So this is going to make it a lot easier for you.
Now, keep in mind with this, I just want to throw a little bit of information in here. When you are looking at the errors, warnings, or even notices, keep in mind underneath these, you can click into them and get page-specific errors, warnings, and notices. And if you have canonical tags set up, they'll show up here.
Nice.
This is just going to kind of broaden the horizon a little bit when it comes to individual pages across the board.
More data, right there to help you out.
Yep.
And I notice people bypass this. Users in general, they forget that you can.
Yep.
Which why not?
Yeah, but that's why we're here.
Hey, yeah.
Yep.
And also within the overview as a whole. So if we go back, I like how we prioritize those different reports for you: crawlability, HTTPS. What is going on with your site and in the back end in general. We want to make sure it's working, desktop, mobile, whatever we're choosing. And for your test site, you definitely want to check this out and simplify it for any of that workflow and that day-to-day. Okay. So now we want to check if Google can access your new site, during this migration.
Yeah. So first thing you want to do with that is, obviously you want to crawl with the Google bot with SEMrush. That's the first thing. Another thing is to actually go in and add a temporary host name in your Google Search Console now. So we're moving now from SEMrush a little bit to now Google product itself. So once you go into Google Search Console, you add a temporary host name of your test subdomain. Again, if you're using a subdomain for this, and then go into the coverage report. When you go into the coverage report, this is essentially going to ensure that any JavaScript on your website can be crawled and indexed. So it's just kind of going to give you a little bit more security, with you specifically knowing, okay, transfer is complete. They can now crawl.
Exactly.
Right,
thank God. Yeah.
Great. And again, you can do this at the beginning before you actually start diving into fixing errors, warnings, or notices, or even any issue pertaining to your site. Again, it's just you want to do this to make sure hey, they're crawling.
Definitely. So checking out that crawlability report and finding out, what the site audit crawler that has in common with the Google bot.
Yeah.
So go ahead and inspect that crawlability report to see if the tool finds any non-indexable, those pages that you can't index.
Yeah. And keep in mind with what Krista just said too, that our site audit crawler via the Google bot itself has the same logic to it that Google actually does. So we follow all their criteria, as I said, previously mentioned actually.
Yes.
We follow all their criteria. So everything is going to be as smooth as possible when it comes to reading, your site itself.
Definitely. And checking if your newly acquired domain is even penalized, just making sure.
Yeah. So that's another thing. That's a whole nother animal sometimes. But so under the manual actions report, under Search Console, you definitely want to go in here and actually view your site's manual action history to make sure, first off, one, there's no current issues with your domain itself. Make sure there's no issues at all.
Yeah.
And, obviously to address any existing problems by following any of the recommendations Google Search Console has provided you. So you definitely want to do this, obviously, to make sure, because, if you don't do this,
who wants to be penalized by Google?
You
definitely don't.
You may buy a domain that's nowhere near good. And
this is not good.
You're going to bury yourself in, SEO that doesn't
Wow.
matter anymore. If again, that's why we put this in this guide right now, because it makes you, it's something that can help your life out.
Just to remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
definitely
of course,
check that out.
The last portion here, of at least of this section right now, check your DNS TTL values. So if people don't know what that means, your DNS, your domain name server, is assigned to your domain itself, and the TTL is the time till live. So what this is really, as you know, when most of your visitors, use your site name and not the IP address to enter your website, it comes into effect. That's when DNS really starts to shine. So really at the end of the day, a domain naming system translates the site's names into IP addresses, so it's easier for crawlers to access and everything like that. So the whole purpose of this really is, during this migration process, if the migration of your website requires a change of IP address, your DNS records will require an update, which, as you know, will result in a little bit of downtime for your website. To minimize the downtime, that's where you can tweak the actual metric for the time till to live values in the DNS entries of your website. Most of the time, these are featured on your hosting server. So you'll need to go in there and actually change that. I believe the default is like 14,400 seconds. But you'll need to reduce that a little bit more, so it's picked up a lot faster. So again, this is something you definitely want to do. And again, you definitely need to, because it's going to benefit you in the long run, especially during migrations of domain names.
Definitely. Okay, awesome. And then also checking your server performance. We want to make sure that all pages of your site are fast loading. So you can go into our own performance report. So if we click on that, you can see here exactly, letting you know in that ring chart below, it's clickable, and you can see exactly what is that report for the different pages, and what is that load range, where are they at?
Yeah.
So this also allows you making sure that, you're available to check this out all the time, and just diagnosing, those main issues. If you see them on the right-hand side, you know exactly what's going on. Okay. So the next step we want to do is copy the GA tracking code to the new site. So to transfer your historical Google Analytics data to your new site, you will need to copy your Google Analytics tracking code from an existing site and implement it on the new version. So again, make sure your new GA tracking code is on the new site.
Yep.
And before we get into it, hey, Bran, creating a URL mapping. Let's talk about it.
So I know users may have different experiences with doing this, because there's a ton of different ways to do it. But, during our testing phases of this, we came up with a total of really 5 really, really good ways to do this. One is using Google Search Console to find all of your indexed pages. All right. This is going to be the first step, obviously, because it's going to give you a good idea of every page you have on your website, obviously. The next one is going to be focused around Google Analytics, okay, and making sure that you find the pages that actually have traffic. So if you have pages that don't have a lot of traffic, again, the whole purpose of using this is just, again, kind of give you a clean idea of, okay, these are the pages that are popular, these are the ones that are not. Maybe I start with the more popular ones so that my traffic can start now migrating to this new website. The third one, and actually the rest of these will be pertaining to SEMrush, in the site audit, all right? You can filter out certain pages with a specific status code. To do this, you just go to the Crawled Pages tab, more filters, right here.
There. Choose the one.
And you can pick ones. If you want to see ones that have server errors since you transferred it over, this is where you start. Maybe there's broken links. You would see these here. If you add new redirects, you want to double check and make sure they're set up correctly, and there's no redirect loops, then you can select the 300s right here, or even go into maybe both of them as well. So there's a lot you could do here, especially with the site audit itself.
So much.
It's
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. The next area is actually the backlink analytic tool, which normally would be used for competitive research. But in this case, it's actually fantastic for using for your own website, because what it's going to help you do is actually find pages of your website that have backlinks associated with them. So you may not know this, off the cuff, really, at the end of the day. But that's why we have this tool here for you. So I highly recommend running your new site, again, into backlink analytics to investigate this. Now, last but not least, this may be one of the most important ones: position tracking. All right. You want to go to position tracking and sort out all the high ranking pages of your website. Now, the reason why you want to do this is, again, to just make sure you have all the appropriate keywords assigned to the appropriate pages, and there was no maybe, rankings declining. And if there were, you can get a good idea of the URLs that were affected by that. Now, the whole purpose of this, just to kind of not go off topic, but kind of change it a little bit now, the whole purpose of, with the current URLs and actually going in and creating the URL mapping structure is that you can have more than one. You can have multiple, whether you're creating URL lists that pertain to just certain issues or certain things or whatever it might be. This is definitely something you want to make sure you're on top of it.
Definitely. And so now that we discussed position tracking tool, backlink analytics, and now that we're creating and managing these different lists that, we can ensure in SEMrush, we can definitely simplify this. So now we want to also find those, we already went over the redirects, correct?
Yeah, so that was actually, you're reading my mind over here. Jeez.
Yeah, I know, right?
So URLs that require redirects. Now, this is a whole nother thing, because as you know, half of your site may be pertaining to redirects after the transfer itself. But again, you definitely want to make sure you have a clear definition of how many you have. So how many pages how many pages in your URL structure of your new site pertain to actually having specific redirects, maybe it's 301s or even 302s, whatever it might be. At the end of the day, without the proper redirection to these pages, these new pages will actually not get the traffic and even page rank of the old pages. So it's going to affect your ranking. So as we said in the beginning of this, if they're going to affect your rankings or not during the transfer, this is one of the most important things, is to make sure your URL structure is appropriately redirected to the currently new domain.
Exactly. And also checking your server performance. That's something also that you can utilize and definitely structure out within SEMrush. So making it very easy, you can select what's going on, those different errors. And at the top, that little drop down too, making it a little bit easier for you. So you can just find them and pinpoint them based on, errors, warnings, and notices. So you can use the site audit to find a list of those pages that you want on a new site to be available. And remember, use the bypass website restriction option if your site is blocked, of course, by passwords or block crawlers in the Robots TXT. And within, the issues tab of the site audit, I like how you can just sort it, make your life a lot easier, and find out what's affecting the performance as a whole.
And then keep in mind too, you can also go up here. Once you select a certain error code, whether it is a certain issue itself, you can come in here and actually, via the export button, export just this information so you can have it outside of SEMrush for your own use, or maybe you need to give it to a team member or whatever it might be.
Outsourcing, who knows?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So this is a perfect example of this, because in here we have, 400 errors. So again, it's just going to make it a little bit easier, in the long run.
Again, yes. Just to export that data and have that list.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about also creating 301 redirect?
So this does pertain to what I was mentioning previously. Now that you've successfully gone through and mapped all of your URLs of your old website and even your new website, and found, at the end of the day, which pages are missing from your new website, obviously you need to fix this, all right? So this is where this really comes into play. This, during the process of fixing this, will, obviously help, make sure you keep your page rank flow, and the backlinks, obviously will remain operational on these pages. Now, for each one of these missing pages, you need to find the destination of your new site that best represents those links. Now, again, that may be difficult, but again, if you know your site very well, which I'm sure most of you do, right? You're gonna know most of you probably have a good idea behind that. Now, that's really one of the biggest things here is you have to make sure you're aligning that up correctly, and there's no, you're not like linking it to a completely different topic. Now, on top of that, we obviously recommend here that you use server-side 301 redirects so that your old URLs will be excluded from the index, and your redirects will still be working when you cancel your current hosting plan. If you're canceling your current hosting plan, or even you let the domain expire, your old one, it still kind of pertains to you regardless, because it's still going to help you in that direction. Now, on top of that, just so you're fully aware, I'm sure, Chris, I don't know if you know this, but in some cases, redirecting to even a category page or even to a main page, if you don't on your new migrated website want to feature that page anymore, you can link them to either, as I said before, current category page or even a main page as a viable option. So
Nice.
I wouldn't recommend doing them a lot, to be honest with you, because, obviously it's not going to be a lot of internal links going to a certain page, but, it may be a workaround in regards to that. And again, too, as everybody knows, we have this available.
In our helpful PDF.
Yeah, and we'll show you, don't worry, at the end of today. Don't worry about that.
No, we're talking a lot. You'll have it, I promise. Yeah, that checklist.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So if you don't need a new page, right? If you do not need a new page or whatever, we recommend you change your server response of a broken page from a 404 to actually a 410 status code.
Okay.
The idea behind the 410 status code is really that, the page is permanently gone and tells the search engine bots to remove that link from their index. So really, it's just another way of, kind of telling Google, minus going into your robots.txt and telling them to crawl, hey, ignore this page. It's gone. Right.
And if you have a careless redirect, it can end up creating redirect loops, chains, and dead ends.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, that's not going to be good.
Especially redirect loops. If you have a bunch of redirects in place after migrating your site and you're waiting for those rankings and everything to kind of populate the way they were before, there's a good chance that won't happen because you're losing, quote unquote link juice in that. With that being said, because the crawler's going to that URL and then crawling it, let's say 5 times, so you have 5 different redirects in place. And by the time it hits that 5th URL, there's no value behind it anymore.
Exactly. And something else we definitely want to mention in this checklist is to update, all URLs. And it's honestly the last thing to do before, you would want to start that migration and to update all URL details. And one of the main bullet points, a few we want to mention is that you want to update all annotations in HTML or the sitemap file.
Yeah.
And that's going to also help you out, and make sure to update all internal links on the new site. Change all of the old URLs, obviously, to the new
Of course,
URLs.
Yep.
And then creating a list of, the websites linking to your content and separate sitemaps with old and new URLs. That'll help you facilitate, your site move.
Yep.
So for your future steps, you have that.
Yeah. I know we've been talking a lot today about redirection.
Hey, that's what webinars are. I'm sorry. But
no, talking a lot, I think it's fine. No, I'm talking more about like the redirection, everything. That's like half of this already so far today.
He says redirect like, hundreds of times a day? So it's not new to me.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Anyway, so obviously the next thing here is you want to make sure you have enabled redirection. Now, this can be done in a few different methods, but at the end of the day, obviously when you rerun your site with the site audit itself, you definitely want to make sure that, your redirection's in place before this. So to do this, make sure you've already enabled and tested all of your redirects if you haven't done so already.
Okay.
All right. Once you're done with that, then simply go back into the site audit campaign. Now, there's 2 ways you can go about this, okay? You can obviously rerun your current campaign.
Yes.
Or you can even create a new project for the campaign itself and compare the data back and forth.
What do you recommend? What do you think when you're...
I leave it up in the air when it comes to that because I feel like it's up to the user itself. If they're like, okay, new site, let's run in the current campaign, great. More power to you. Go ahead and do it. Because we've already exported the PDF as we talked about earlier.
You have that file
But
already.
if they want to, actually just keep that both records of everything in our interface, of course, we give you the option to do so.
I was going to say, if you have a lot of leg room too for projects, why not?
Yeah,
if you have only 5, okay, don't. Rerun it in the same site audit.
Exactly, right. Again, it's subjective when it comes to that. But at the end of the day, hey, we're giving you some insight here. A couple different ways to do it, just in case you don't want to read a PDF and go through all that data, we give you the option here really quickly to do it.
Exactly. Very nice. And, make sure your website is verified with Google Search Console. So you just need to check if your website ownership is still valid after the move in Search Console in those settings. And if you're using an HTML file as a verification method, make sure that your new website contains that file.
Yeah, make sure obviously it's inside of your root directory of your new website after you've migrated it. If something does happen and it's not there, I'm sure you can I believe you can actually go right back to GSC and get another one.
Okay, so very easy.
Yeah, definitely.
That's good.
Next area is going to be requesting a domain change via Google Search Console. Now, this is obviously a very important one because you definitely want to make sure everything kind of stays, put while you're transferring everything. So to help Google index your new URLs at your new domain and minimize your ranking loss, you need to submit a change of address to in the change of address tool in Search Console. Again, it's very simplistic to get there. Once you get there, you can simply just type in your new domain, request it, and it's up to Google itself just to kind of find it.
Yes.
And gather the info for you.
And they better.
Oh yeah,
they must. Yes. And then we also just want to mention, send old and new URLs to Google Search Console. This way, you'll be able to monitor how old your URLs are being removed and the new ones added to the index. Finally, this will help you with the new URLs that you still have, and they should be, indexed remaining.
Yeah. All right. Now, next couple parts here are going to be pretty self-explanatory because we've talked about links since the day I was born, apparently. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
He loves this. Oh my God.
So obviously you want to make sure you update all your links when it comes to ad campaigns, backlinks, and everything pertaining to that. Now I know, sometimes this might not be the best thing, but you do want to, obviously going out and reaching out to every single one of the domains that have given you a backlink. It might take a lot of time.
Might take a little bit of time.
Yeah, probably. So, with that being said, you want to make sure you reach out to the sites that link to you and ask to actually change your links to your new website. If this isn't possible, you could always actually put a 301 redirect in place to hopefully help with that. On top of that, if you are running any ad campaigns, make sure they obviously point to the new landing pages on obviously the new domain. Next to that as well, you have the idea, really want to make sure you check all the links in your social media profiles as well. That's actually one of the bigger ones I've seen.
It's funny what you'll see. Yeah.
I'm guilty of it, to be honest with you. I'm 100% guilty of it.
All the time, yeah.
I was on top of everything, and the next thing you know, forgot to change the social media links.
Exactly. And everyone's like, why am I not going to their site? What's going on?
That's exactly what happened. Yep. One phone call away, and you're like, wait, what? Oh, no, I got to fix that.
Dang.
And last but not least, of course, using the site audit to find all internal links with redirects and make sure there are no loops or even long redirect chains affecting your site performance. This kind of goes back to what Krista was talking about earlier. When it comes to URL redirects,
the site
you want to
speed,
make
performance.
Yeah, you want to make sure it's as clean as possible. And if you have a lot of redirects in place and there's a lot of redirect loops, you need to get that addressed immediately before Google starts actually crawling your site. Because at this point, there's a good chance you've already submitted your GSC and your new domain to do it GSC, and now you're kind of stuck up in the air. So you want to make sure you address that as soon as possible.
And what about your disavow links to Search Console?
Yeah, so if you obviously have a Search Console account, you need to make sure that you re-upload your current disavow list to Search Console. I mean, it makes sense. Just make sure that your disavow file is available on your new website. Otherwise, the low quality backlinks of your previous site will be taken into account by Google. So just keep that in mind. All right, just do that as soon as possible. Again, just like before.
Definitely. Okay. And now that we're on our checklist, other ways, that you can monitor your migration within SEMrush.
Yeah. So this is kind of a trick, a little bit like a tip almost, actually.
He's saying trick.
I keep saying trick. I don't know why.
We're about to trick everyone.
It's kind of like a tip right here. So what you can do underneath the position tracking tool to start here. All right. This, again, we'll kind of dive into this a little bit more in a minute, but what I'm going to show you right now is the notes section. So in the notes itself, let's say, for instance, on April 29th, I went in and transferred the site. The site was successfully transferred today on the 30th. In here, I would simply just put, website transferred, right? Oh, I can't spell it right. Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Yeah, I'll just leave it at website. Anyway, all right. So with that, for the title right here, we'll have that. All right. And then you can do the description right here being, I transferred my website on this current time frame. And then what you're going to see is that note now appear. I'll show you right here.
Like a little diamond.
Like a little diamond right here. Right. And if you click into it, it's actually going to, give you a little pop-up right here. And give
it just is a brief summary of what it's, and you can always add your initials so anyone on the team knows what was happening that day. And something else that I noticed is that we have a notes section. Well, we always have as a whole within SEMrush, all the way at the bottom. So many people, what is this? So the notes in the management portion, will literally give you a rundown of not only the notes you have made in your account, but also SEMrush and Google updates. We let you know literally what is going on. Is there a Google update? How are the SERPs shaking up? In what database? So as you can see, the sensor is always blowing up. So whenever you want to come here just to get a better idea of what's going on, you could definitely utilize the notes section.
100% agree with it. Now, another portion of this that may be a little bit different than what we saw previously is here. So when you're actually in the notes tab itself, like in the actual like tool part of our tool itself, in here, when you add a new note, you have the ability to hit the edit button and then go in here and actually show in certain things. So if I only want to show in the position tracking tool, or even a site audit, which I recommend, again, probably all of these would be fantastic, especially for this node. And then what you'll do is you'll pick the, in this case, just HPO, put the external URL. So just to give you an idea, as you can see right here, it's just going to give you another area where you can, have an external article or another resource pertaining to this. So it could be even something internal to your business that you link here just to have it again. So if another member of your team that this project is shared with, or, when they go in, view this data, here we are. Here's the link linking to what it is.
And of course,
again, that's subjective, but again,
exactly. We want your team, you should be utilizing it as a whole. So to have this ability to plug that in, having everything in one dashboard, this is going to make your life a lot easier.
Yeah. And now one of the biggest things obviously here is, during the process of setting up a node here, the whole purpose of doing so, as we said before for the position tracking tool right here, all right, is that when you add your new website, so in this case, let me hop back down.
Oh, it's at the front. I favorited it. Oh, we're looking at position track.
Here we go. Sorry. Anyway, all right. So here we are. When let's say you're migrating to a new domain, if you already have a project set up, great for that current domain that you already your old one anyway. Come in here and add it as a competitor, okay?
Again,
which you can do underneath the overview tab right here, or you can even do it up here if you want to. You just simply click in here.
We make it really
type in your domain, your new domain, and add it here. Once you do that, what it's actually going to do is when your rankings start getting picked up by Google, we're going to start reflecting that here. So it's kind of like a little trick. Again, we're going to give you an idea of where your old domain's rankings kind of started falling off and when your new ones started getting picked up. Very useful, and I would highly recommend using that.
Definitely. Right? And then like we were saying earlier, honestly, the next step is after the migration, we want to repeat the process.
It's like rinse and repeat, really. I'm sure I might be reading Chris's mind right now, but site audit?
Go back to it. That's right. You definitely want to check if your site has any issues. Rerun that site audit and also compare your tabs and the different crawls. So within the site audit, every time it's running, I like how, hey, we're going to keep that data for you. So you can compare and contrast. Getting a list of basically all of those new or fixed issues, laying it out so it's really easy for you to understand, what am I fixing? What do I need to work on ASAP? You have that ordered list out. And then again, like we were saying earlier, you want to check that performance of your site. You want to make sure that, hey, that crawlability, everything, is up to speed, no pun intended, but also that, there's no issues going on. Because that's always something you want to pay attention to with any new site.
Yeah. Yep.
Definitely.
Couldn't agree more. Now, obviously, one of the next portions, which makes a lot of sense, is track the indexing of your new pages on your website. If you haven't done so already during this process, upload 2 sitemaps with the old and new URLs to GSC or Google Search Console. This way, it's going to actually help you with the monitoring of how your old URLs are being removed and the new ones are being added to the index. Obviously, and finally, in this case, only the new URL should remain. So it's again just going to help you in the long run when it comes to linking.
Yes. And also, something we want to say is, after the migration, you definitely want to track your positions because, again, we can go back to the position tracking tool. You want to make sure if your site does not recover in a couple weeks, you want to understand what's going on. And also, don't forget to track desktop and mobile. Because, hey, you want both access, you want to understand that data and where you're keeping track of those keywords. Okay, so right there, you have that option. Don't forget, guys, very easily. You can add them. And a lot of users always ask, well, how can I just copy and paste quickly for my last report? So you can just choose the same list. You always can do that. And you can even edit if you want to. Just add simply, whatever terms you want.
Mm-hmm.
And just to mention, the position tracking tool, it just automatically defaults to organic search. You can always filter to Google Ads.
Of course, yeah, to get that information. If you're running ads,
if you are,
and you want to compare the data again, just like organic, we're crawling for both of them anyway. So we're going to show you exactly where the ads land on the SERPs, as you know.
In that location, for that device.
Exactly, right. And you'll even see it right here, get an idea of whether they're on top of the SERP or they're even at the bottom. Again, it's going to give you a lot of insight on that.
And the thing that I like too is you can see that visibility over time. Look at that trend. So it's funny to see, look at this peak, and then oh no, there's that dip.
Exactly. Right.
Over time. Look at those competitors.
And last but not least, especially with this, if you in this case have transferred domain to another hosting provider, definitely make sure you cancel that old hosting provider. It'll kind of alleviate some issues with anything that may happen. But there you go.
Yes. All right. So now let me check out 1 second.
So we actually just got a really, really good question. So,
awesome. Thank you, Jeannie.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's actually one of the best questions I've seen. So on here, she had asked, does SEMrush track updates / changes to MySQL and PHP versions during a migration that the site relies on? So no, but that's a very good point. So what I would recommend doing in that case is simply have like a note on, like if you're running with Mac or you have something like that, open the notes or something like that, write down what the current PHP version of your site is. And then when you transfer it, make sure that's already set up in that case, or, again, MySQL version as well. It's not the best option in this case, but it's something. It's going to help you at least on your end when it comes to the transferring of it. You can also take screenshots if you want as well. There's a couple options you can do with that. But yeah, in SEMrush specifically, no, we don't pick that up.
Yeah. But of course, we can always suggest that.
Oh, of course.
We can
send
that through.
A great piece of feedback. So yeah, we're definitely going to submit that to our feedback team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just to mention some, troubleshooting techniques, and if you notice anything wrong with the site and the way your audience is maybe, behaving on the site, you definitely want to understand if you lost any organic traffic. Definitely check out your rankings, inspect your positions, and within SEMrush. Also, if there's an issue that's affecting, many pages throughout the website, just keep rerunning that site audit campaign, and we'll let you know exactly, what's going on with those technical issues and how can you fix them.
And then obviously, next one, after doing more of the technical things, you want to focus now on the on-page portions of things. So what you want to do in this case is run the on-page SEO checker, which is again underneath the project section.
Third tool.
This is, and it's called ideas to do. Yeah, so it's giving you some ideas, for your site.
Look at all those ideas.
Exactly. Everything from strategy to even content. So it's great. The whole purpose of this is to make sure you're using this tool for your underperforming pages to get them optimized more efficiently, using the ideas that SEMrush gives you. So here, obviously, loading your pages, you can do this very easily, simply by if you already have a tool running, great. You can come up here and actually import certain keywords and the pages surrounding them, whether it's via organic research. You just import via GSC. You already have them put in a CSV file directly from the position tracking tool too. Or hey, you want to type them in manually?
Why not?
Go ahead.
And definitely, if you want to, if we didn't say already, connect your Google Analytics, getting those ideas on what else can I do to improve that user experience, especially after that migration. Hey, you want to get those ideas if we have any, of course. Okay. So just checking out.
So pretty much the last thing here is when it comes to troubleshooting, there's going to be times when you just don't know what happened. You don't know what's going on. You're blind right now. You don't understand what's going on. You're trying to fix it. All our suggestions here, obviously a lot of them pertain to SEMrush and using those tools, but sometimes, those won't be the solution for you depending on your site and the structure behind it. I would recommend going in and actually going to the Google Webmaster's help forum and searching there. Search there for the results you're looking for or the questions you have. There are thousands of commonly asked questions there all the time. So highly recommend it.
Yes. All right, guys. And if you have any questions now's the time to ask them. Let us know. We have about 5 minutes.
Yeah. So one last thing, actually.
Never mind. Brandon,
hold on. The questions
He's not done yet.
Questions can still come in. Don't worry. Is this article is available right now on SEMrush.
Oh,
It's
yes.
under our news section. It is completely available to the public right now if you want to go in. It's a nice step-by-step process with little animated effects and stuff.
It's in the blog and it's an ebook.
Yeah, so let me real quick, I'll show you what this looks like, just so you have a good understanding of what it is when you're diving into it. So simply right here, all right? You can access this by accessing the blog page right here, all right? Or even if you want to, you can go back to the homepage and then go to news in this case, right? When you go to either one of them, up in the search area right up here, you can simply just type in, let's see, website, example. Oh no, hold on, I forgot migration. Oh no, there we go. Website migration. Oh, did I search the wrong place?
Okay, I would say it's in ebooks and blogs.
Yeah, I believe it was here. Yeah, here we go.
Oh, but here we are. The new
so this
features.
is going to give you some of the insight on the new features surrounding this. So that's what I was getting at with this, is some of the portions we were talking about earlier. All right. But now on top of that, as we were saying before, actually diving into this, just go back for 1 second, team. All right. Yeah. So once you hop into the actual area under the blog page, you'll have a ton of data here, as you can see this. But again, you always say you have the ability up here to sort by featured tags and whatnot. But, in that case, as you can see, it's on our blog. You have the website migration checklist. Now on here, you'll get, step-by-step things, get an idea of what a migration is, tips from
video experts, definitely.
Well, this is also personally, obviously, why this is awesome, and I love it so much. For each one of these, you can click into them and, hey, if you're doing multiple things at the same time, there's probably going to be a good chance that it's going to be pretty difficult to do all these. So follow this. All right. You can create a checklist right here. You can even go in here and select an idea. It's just kind of an estimation of how many pages you're going to be, migrating. On top of that, when you create it, you're going to get a whole idea down here. This is fully powered by our site audit. So everything in here is obviously a lot of data is going to be coming from that.
Very
But
interactive.
again, too, there's a lot of stuff you can reference here. Okay.
Yeah. And I love how, go down there, look at that little guy. When you click on, even he's like, all right, I'm going to stop planning now and start my website migration.
Yep. And even here too, remember, you can download the PDF for your own self, for your own records, to have that as a backup.
Yeah. All right, great. All right. So I see we have one question just talking about, just wondering, what were those tools that we went over from the beginning? So again, we were talking about, I think we said it probably 100 times, site audit. Site audit tool, position tracking, and then our content analyzer.
Yep.
So just remember those three main portions. And I think that's going to be us today. That's going to be just our chat.
Yes, it is.
And we're going to have another episode of the Digital Rush. What is it?
End of
June.
June.
June, yeah.
Yep.
May, we're both very busy. Conferences this summer. Hey, we need some vacation. Yeah. All right. So let us know if you guys have any questions or anything about the tool, honestly. You can email digitalrush@semrush.com. So that's it.
No spaces in Digital Rush.
No
just
space.
Make sure. Yep.
Yeah.
It's all one word.
So let us know any inquiries, or just you want a training session or want to know more about the tool. Let us know.
Yep. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining today.
Bye,
really
guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.